Before this video ends, you are going to question something you have believed your entire life. Not because I am going to tell you what to think, but because I am going to show you something that has been sitting in your Bible the whole time and nobody pointed it out to you. Are you ready? Good. Because we are going there right now. I want you to do something before we start. Picture Moses in your mind right now. Go ahead. Take 2 seconds. Picture him. You see him, don't you? You know exactly what he looks like. You have seen him in church. You have seen him in movies. You have seen him in paintings. You have had that image in your head since you were a child. Hold that image. Because in the next 10 minutes that image is going to change forever. And the thing that is going to change it is not my opinion. It is not a new theory. It is not something discovered last year in a laboratory. It is one sentence. Written over 3,000 years ago. That has been sitting in plain sight in one of the most read books in human history. One sentence that answers the question nobody has been asking out loud. What did Moses actually look like? And the answer, when you see it, is going to hit you harder than you expect. Let us go. The story begins not with Moses but with a mother making the most desperate decision any parent can make. The Pharaoh of Egypt has issued a decree. Every Israelite baby boy must be killed. A woman gives birth to a son. She looks at him and she cannot do it. She cannot hand him over. So she does something that sounds like madness. She puts her baby in a basket. She walks to the edge of a river. And she lets him go. Now I need you to feel that moment. Not as a Bible story you have heard before, but as a real event that happened to a real woman on a real riverbank. She did not know if he would survive. She did not know who would find him. She did not know if she would ever see him again. She placed her child in the water and walked away. That river was the Nile. And the Nile is in Africa. This is an African story from the very first moment. Now Pharaoh's daughter comes to the river. She sees the basket. She opens it. She looks at this baby and something happens in her heart that no royal decree can override. She decides to keep him. She raises him as her own son. Inside the palace of the most powerful ruler in the ancient world. And here is where I need you to pay attention very carefully. The Bible says Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians. All of it. Do you understand what that means? Egyptian palace education at that level was the most advanced curriculum available anywhere on earth at that time. We are talking about mathematics that would not appear in Europe for another 1,000 years. Astronomy. Medicine. Architecture. Law. Military strategy. Sacred theology. The knowledge systems that built the pyramids and mapped the stars and preserved human bodies for eternity. Moses had access to all of it. He was not a slave in Egypt. He was not a servant in Egypt. He was royalty in Egypt. And here is the question I want you to sit with for a moment. If you grew up in a palace, if you were educated as royalty, if you ate the same food, wore the same clothes, spoke the same language, walked the same halls as the king himself, what would you look like to a stranger who met you on the street? You would look like one of them. Wouldn't you? Hold that thought. Because it becomes very important in about 2 minutes. Now Moses grows up. And one day something shifts inside him. He sees an Egyptian taskmaster beating an Israelite slave. And something in him, something connected to the blood running through his veins even though he was raised to ignore it, something in him cannot stand it. He intervenes. The taskmaster dies. And Moses has to run. He flees Egypt. He crosses into the desert. He walks until he reaches a place called Midian. He is exhausted. He sits down by a well. And now we arrive. At the moment I have been building towards since the beginning of this video. A group of women come to draw water from the well. Local shepherds drive them away. Moses stands up and helps them. He drives the shepherds off and draws water for their flocks. Simple enough story, right? But here is where it gets interesting. The women go home to their father. His name is Jethro. And Jethro asks them a question. He says, "How did you come back so quickly today?" And the women answer him. They say, "An Egyptian man helped us at the well." Stop. Read that again. An Egyptian man. Not a Hebrew man. Not an Israelite man. Not a stranger. Not a foreigner. An Egyptian. Now I need you to understand something about this moment. These women had never met Moses before in their lives. They were in Midian. Not Egypt. Nobody told them where he came from. Nobody introduced him. There was no name tag. No announcement. No context. They simply looked at this man and described what they saw. And what they saw was an Egyptian. Now remember that thought I asked you to hold earlier. If you grew up in a palace, educated as royalty, living as Egyptian, what would you look like to a stranger? There is your answer. The women at the well just told you what Moses looked like. And now I need to ask you something directly. What does an Egyptian look like? Because this is where most people stop thinking. They hear Egyptian and their mind goes to Hollywood. To the movies. To the images they have seen since childhood. But we are not talking about Hollywood Egypt. We are talking about real Egypt. Historical Egypt. Ancient Egypt on the African continent. So let me show you what the evidence says about what the ancient Egyptians actually looked like. The Greek historian Herodotus visited Egypt in the 5th century BC. He was an outsider. A Greek man traveling to a foreign country and writing down what he observed. He had no political agenda. He was just describing what he saw. He described the Egyptians as having dark skin and woolly hair. That is a direct observation from someone who was there. Now look at the walls of ancient Egyptian tombs and temples. These are paintings created by Egyptians themselves. Showing themselves. With no European influence. No outside interpretation. Just Egyptians painting what Egyptians looked like. What do you see? Dark brown skin. Full features. African faces. And in 2017 a genetic study published in the journal Nature Communications, one of the most respected scientific journals in the world, analyzed ancient Egyptian mummies. The oldest samples showed genetic profiles more closely related to populations from sub-Saharan Africa than to populations from the Middle East or Europe. Let me say that again so it lands properly. The science says the ancient Egyptians were more genetically African than anything else. So when the women at the well called Moses an Egyptian, they were not describing a light-skinned man with blue eyes. They were describing an African man. And now I want to ask you something else. What do you think happened to that image you held at the beginning of this video? Is it still the same? Or has something shifted? Because we are not done yet. There is one more layer to this story that almost nobody talks about. It is about the name Moses itself. In Hebrew the name Moshe means drawn out because Pharaoh's daughter drew him from the water. But look at the name through the lens of ancient Egyptian and something remarkable appears. The suffix Mos or Mesis in ancient Egyptian means son of or born of. This suffix appears in the names of multiple Egyptian pharaohs. Thutmose, son of Thoth. Ahmose, son of the moon. Ramesses, son of Ra. The name Moses is an Egyptian name structure. Given to him by an Egyptian woman inside an Egyptian palace on African soil. His very name is African. Now I want to bring this all together for you. We have a man born to an Israelite mother on African soil. Placed in an African river. Rescued by an African princess. Raised inside an African palace. Educated in African knowledge systems. Given an African name. And described by strangers as an African man. The evidence is not hidden. It is not controversial. It is not a fringe theory. It is in the text. It is in the history. It is in the archaeology. It is in the genetics. Moses was shaped by Africa in every possible way. And here is why that matters. Not just historically. Not just academically. It matters because this man, this African man raised in an African palace educated in African wisdom, became the instrument through which one of the most significant events in human history took place. The liberation of an enslaved people. The confrontation with the most powerful empire on earth. The crossing of a sea that the science says could have physically opened. All of that was set in motion by a man whose story began with a mother standing on the banks of an African river letting her child go. That is the story of Moses. Not the Hollywood version. The real one. And now I want to hear from you. Did this video change the image you had in your mind at the beginning? Drop your answer in the comments right now. Just be honest. Yes or no. Or tell me what surprised you most. I read every single comment and I want to know what landed for you today. If this video challenged something you believed and you think someone else deserves to have their mind challenged in the same way, share it with them today. One person. That is all I am asking. And before you go, if you have not watched our Red Sea video yet, go watch it right now. We break down the 1992 scientific study that proved the Red Sea crossing was physically possible and reveal the one detail no scientist has ever explained. The link is in the description and on the end screen right now. Subscribe to Ancient Truth TV. Every week we go deeper into biblical history and ancient African mysteries that most channels will never touch. We will see you in the next one.